But thank you is not enough for you. We also, here at the school, vow to continue to prioritize recognition and support for all our veteran alumni, our veteran staff, who some of them are here today, and our veteran family members. Our students need to know about the sacrifices that veterans are making and have made. I'm hoping that this wall is a small symbol of those sacrifices and will remind all our students, all who work here and all who visit this school, of those who serve our country and who have served our country. There are many challenges throughout our world, and great men like these help our country meet those challenges. Today is a small way to remember and thank these veterans for your service to our world, to our country, and to each one of us. So I want to thank our current military and our current veterans. So thank you. I'm going to ask you now all to help me welcome our Master of Ceremonies I mentioned already, and our captain, Mr. Mike Jolly.
I had told Greg Essler before today started, and I mean this honestly, this is probably the biggest thing I've ever been involved with through all the end of season banquets and honors and all that kind of stuff. And I said, this is a big day. So Greg gave me the advice that he gave, Greg being our former basketball coach. When they had a big game, his kids were saying that, oh, this is going to be a big game. And Greg would say, well, just don't screw it up. And so taking Greg's advice. And in thinking about this, I've often said to Jack Jarvis, who's one of my right-hand men here, that having been an officer, and Jack being an enlisted NCO, I said an officer is only as good as his NCOs, and that's the truth. Not only does every NCO know that, but every officer who's worth his salt should know that too. So I've had a tremendous amount of help on this, which I appreciate immensely, and some other people will be mentioned along the way. Right now though, however, whether we follow the exact order of events, John Berlin, my other right-hand man here, we are blessed to have a color guard from Selfridge National Guard Base who will present the colors, and also at which time we'll be singing the national anthem. So if you rise to your feet for that.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed, and the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare above bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Lord, arms.
Before Paul Kucharek comes up, Colonel Paul comes up to give his address, I'm going to add a little bit to what Larry said about the importance of this, and particularly the importance of this both to individuals who have served, but for citizens in our country who perhaps haven't and don't get it. And what I'm saying about not getting it is perhaps not understanding, being puzzled by why we do these types of honoring dedications and the bond that there is between military, which is regardless of branch of service, rank, or anything else. And yet, it's not exclusive. I hope nobody feels here that veterans are holding themselves apart or better or anything like that, but when people who are veterans meet one another, it's an immediate, where did you serve? What did you, and it's like magnets coming together in a science class. It just comes together. Probably like many other groups, but in many ways stronger. The last thing I would want is to, like, our society has enough divisiveness in it right now to hold veterans separate and apart. I think the more important thing is to understand that we are you and you are us. And when I look at the names up here, many of them I taught or coached, or some who can't be here. There's going to be a name up there, Anthony Berger, who can't be here because he's going on to the other side of eternity. He's on the Navy plaque. Yet his grandson, Brian Miles' name is there also. I think of Keith McKenzie, who's a Navy SEAL, and we may not know where he is today. He could be at his training base, he could be in Somalia, he's on active duty. And go down name after name, which I haven't listed here, that those kids were kids. They walked these halls, or they walked the halls of St. Joe's, or our old school by the airport. And we had no idea at the time of what kind of greatness we may be in the presence of. I have learned a lot about Bob Poxon. I've seen his picture. I can imagine him as a student very easily. And I can imagine as a kid that I would have loved knowing, teaching, coaching. And yet we have hundreds of kids like that walking our halls today. And probably when Bob was a student, first at St. Joe's and then coming to De La Salle for his last years of school, we probably wouldn't have seen the greatness that was called forth from him by the situation that he found himself in and how he chose to respond. So it's especially meaningful as a teacher and a coach, not just to recognize, and I love the fact that Father Paul not only went back, when we take an oath, and I mentioned to John, I said, did you know that the oath that enlisted men take is a little bit different from the oath that officers take? 50-some years ago I took that oath. I thought we all took the same oath. But there's a common element in both, and that is swearing to protect, defend, honor the Constitution, so help me God. And I love the last part of that in there too. But when I was sweating what we were going to be doing today, how did I prepare? I watched the first half of Gettysburg on Saturday night. I figured that would inspire me. And I read Lincoln's Gettysburg Address and some study on it. And the interesting thing is we swear an allegiance to defend the Constitution, but Lincoln, in his brilliance and in his humble and wonderful way of putting words together, went 7. Well, 7 isn't when the Constitution was ratified. 7 was when the Declaration of Independence was signed. And I think as a country, as a group, we can all unite in the God-given rights, thank you so much, Father, for prepping this on that of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but inalienable, given to us by God, that we can all support that 100%. One time at the dinner table, my oldest son was challenging me about my service. Probably some hippie teacher at school was. I'm only saying that, but because when, where's Pat Bushmall? He's somewhere behind the camera. There he is over there. Pat and I served in Korea, same year. And again, that was one of those magnets coming together. But when we came back, we came in the back door. They brought us through Fort Lewis, Washington. They let us travel in civilian clothes, even though we were flying military standby. We were not welcomed. And there were 2 times that I can, probably other times, but that I got tearful as a soldier. One was when I was leaving to go on active duty in 1970, because with my training, I figured I'd end up in Nam. And when I was saying goodbye to my parents, I honestly wasn't sure whether I was going to be coming back or not. I think we all assume that's a possibility, because we all have had basic training. And basic training is, you have a gun. Even if you're going to be a clerk, even if you're going to be a medic or something, you go through basic training, and you may be called upon. Well, my path led me to Korea rather than Vietnam, but we were not welcomed home. And the other time that I got tearful was out at the Macomb Center for the Performing Arts, when an entertainer out there, Wayne Newton, at the end of his show, and Gay was with me on that, he asked all the veterans to stand up. And I'm going, oh boy, what is this? And maybe Bob felt the same way, because he's from our generation, that, is this going to be good or bad? Well, I stood up, and when his drummer had been a veteran, he gave us a thanks, the American flag unfurled behind the stage, and I love the patriotic songs that you played today. And my wife knows I got a little tearful then too, because it was the first time anybody had said thanks. Thanks for what? For, as it would say, and those who know me know I don't like using notes, it's probably a good thing. But we're going to be giving a challenge coin out, smaller than this. Someone asked, is this the right same size? And a challenge coin traditionally is something exchanged between, when you leave a post, is to remember that post. But on the other side, besides on this side, which the brothers in the school, particularly Brother Ken, helped choose, the St. John Baptist de La Salle, which says, thank you for your service, with another line that I'll read later. But on this side, honoring all who served. A veteran, you've heard this before, I think. A veteran is someone who wrote a blank check made payable to the United States of America for an amount up to and including their life. And it's a great line, because we all know that may happen, and we're willing and choosing to do that. The other line on the front side of the coin says, continuing to build boys into men. So our school does a wonderful job of building boys into men, and then some of us choose to go further in the military. Helps us continue to grow. I'm not the keynote speaker, and I know I'm going to wrap this up, because I am so eager to hear Paul and his words. But of the people who weren't able to make it, Greg Breckman from our committee just cannot. He's almost heartbroken over that. My all-time favorite teacher, Len Mazer, a thriving 96-year-old who lives in Livonia, cannot get to this side of town for it. He is a Marine in World War II. And our grandson, who has 5 tours under his belt as an Army Ranger. I actually chose not to invite him, not because he doesn't deserve honor, but there's, if you face combat, you're a different person because of it. And my wife, knowing that this was coming up, gave me this quote, and I think it's true. It says, "The thing about war, if you've been in one, you never really leave it. Even when it's all over and everybody goes home, a piece of you remains behind, buried in the bloodied ground, and when somebody calls it back, that piece sort of jumps to attention, if you know what I mean. And you can't hide a thing like that." And my real concern with Derek, our Ranger grandson, is that he wouldn't be able to hide it. He would find this too emotional for him. So, there may have been other things in my notes. I'm not even going to look at them, because the next, this is an absolute pleasure. Colonel Kucharek, Paul, if you'd come to the front, I'd be most happy to introduce you. I don't know whether to salute. If I was in uniform, I'd know what to do. Darn well better salute. I had first come to De La Salle in 1974, left to take another assignment, and returned in 1982. And that is the year that we moved from the old school down by City Airport to Warren. And among those students who moved out with the school and the faculty was Paul Kucharek. And I was a freshman coach at the time. Paul was a varsity player. But he was one of those kids, and there are kids here today, and trying to make eye contact with the younger looking people around here, and one in particular who I personally invited that stood out. And Paul was one of those kids. I found out later he was also a football player, because I came in the winter, and we stayed in touch more or less because his father and I are good friends and we see each other regularly. But Paul lives in Wyoming, teaches in Idaho, and yet jumped at the opportunity to return to De La Salle to address you today as our keynote speaker. His resume speaks for itself. Combat pilot, served in the Pentagon. If you're interested in those details, read more for yourself. But just as a young man who I admired at the time, and now an older young man who I still admire a great deal, I welcome Paul to our school and turn you over.
Thank you, Mike. Greatly appreciate that. And Father Paul, I have to say amen to your homily. Definitely a call to action for all of us. Good afternoon. It truly is a pleasure to be here and an honor. First, let me say welcome to the members of Lieutenant Bob Robert Poxon's family. Welcome to members of my family, friends, faculty, staff, and students. As I said, I am truly humbled and honored to be here for this Military Wall of Honor dedication ceremony. As we dedicate this wall, front and center is going to be the Medal of Honor, and rightly so, as our nation's highest military decoration. As you hear later on, Lieutenant Poxon's Medal of Honor citation, you're going to hear some words, you're going to read some words and phrases that will stand out to you. Risk of life above and beyond the call of duty. Indomitable courage and will. refused medical aid and evacuation, selflessly seized the initiative, led his men. I'm sure if Lieutenant Poxon were here, he would communicate to us what I have heard other Medal of Honor recipients say, either in person, those that I've had the honor to talk to, those that I've seen interviewed. Most of them, if not all of them, would say, I was just doing my duty. These were individuals that did not wake up one day and decide to do something extraordinary. These were individuals who made extraordinary a part of their daily lives. It was a habit. As we look at this wall, today, in future days, future years, future decades, I hope it will be a reminder to all of us of those alumni from St. Joseph's and De La Salle who served. Some who, as Mike Jolly very well pointed out, paid the ultimate price. But all of these individuals gave. They were willing to sacrifice everything, including their own lives if need be, so that we could enjoy and they could defend the liberty and the ideals embodied in the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. These freedoms and rights that we know, and that, as Thomas Jefferson pointed out, were endowed by our Creator. Every service member, as Mike mentioned, takes an oath. Takes an oath to the United States Constitution to defend that Constitution and the ideals embodied in that Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And they are willing to lay down their lives for each and every one of us every day, for their friends if need be. So what we know is that Lieutenant Poxon and the alumni whose names will adorn this wall served. They were taught these ideals by their family, by our families, and in measure as well from this school, from this institution. So a few months ago, Mike graciously took time out of his day to show my dad and I around the school. And as he mentioned, it took me back a few years. I was in the class along with my buddy Greg there, the first graduating class from this school. And as we walked around the school, I will tell you what I was really struck by. You know, I looked at the pictures on the walls, and what I saw when I saw those pictures, fantastic memories. I had some amazing memories going to this school, graduating from this school. And I looked at the pictures and I looked in the faces of those students, and I thought every one of them were the Lieutenant Poxons of the world, myself included. We walked these halls at this school, we had hopes, we had dreams, we had aspirations, we had ambitions, right? And then I started thinking about military memorials. And my mind was caught up by numbers. And I'll get to that in a second. But when you think about World War I, 100,000 Americans killed. World War II, 400,000. Korea, 35,000. Vietnam, 58,000. But I hope that this memorial, we will see more than just names and numbers. That we will look through those names and we will see people, real people. Former students, fathers, grandfathers, uncles, cousins, nephews, friends. Every veteran whose name will be on this memorial was molded by interactions that they had in this school. I promise you that happened. They were molded by the interactions they had with family. They were molded by the interactions they had with teachers, friends, coaches, administrators, and staff. I also promise you that each of those veterans, each of us, were molded by the experiences that we had here. In the classroom, in Christian ministry and service, retreats, sports, student council, play productions, and a host of other activities, choir, band, intramural sports. For each of these veterans, myself included, this school is today, always has been, and always will be more than a building. It's always going to be about the people. I just want to share a couple of experiences with you to highlight what I was talking about with this molding of interactions. So, my junior year, basketball season, our starting 5, 6 men off the bench were all seniors. Second stringers were the juniors, and so every day in practice, and if Gary Buslip were here, he would attest to this. We had some brutal practices. It was, as Ray Barr said, it was a Donnybrook every day. Elbows flying, people diving on the floor for loose balls, elbows into each other. It was rough. But one of the things that I will tell you is every single person on that team would have done anything for each other. That experience playing basketball at De La Salle taught me camaraderie, taught me teamwork, taught me sacrifice. It taught me a dedication to a higher cause, which I carried with me into my 30-plus years of military service. My second experience came at the very beginning of my senior year. Greg, did you take AP Chemistry? Okay, you'll remember this. So Greg vouched for me on this one. So first day into the classroom with Brother Xavier. You get the usual, hey, this is what the course is going to be about. This is a college level class. You all better be ready. My brain was still on summer vacation mode. Those of you that start school can kind of understand that, right? And so the first day gives us an assignment. Read chapter 1 of the textbook. And Paul Kucharek was still in summer mode. I had been working during the summer outside, been having a good time. Came in, first thing Brother Xavier does on day 2. All right, everybody, put your backpacks against the wall. Take out a blank piece of paper, you're going to have a pop quiz. Greg, you remember that? Yeah, me too. And I had not read a lick, and I was hoping, okay, maybe my sophomore chemistry class is going to get me to remembering things, not a thing. 0 out of 5. What that experience taught me was I was never going to be unprepared again. That was a wake-up call from Brother Xavier that I carried with me into combat in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. And I was never unprepared for any mission that I ever flew, whether it was peacetime or combat. And that was ingrained in me on day 2 of my AP calculus, or AP chemistry class, at the hands of Brother Xavier. So for many of us, the names of the individuals you're going to see on this wall, our service in the United States military was more than a job. It was a calling. I felt that call that pulled me into the service of my country as a member of the United States Air Force. I also hope that when you see this memorial, behind those names, you're not just going to see those individuals, but you're going to see the families whose love and support made their service possible. I'll never forget during my Air Force career, no matter where I went, and even today, people will thank me for my service, and I truly appreciate it. But we do not give the families who love and support those service members as much thanks as they deserve. I can recall when I came back from Iraq after 6 months. Got home and my wife said, "Thank goodness you are home." I said, "Why?" She said, "I don't think I can take another unexpected knock at the door." Just wondering if it was going to be the time when 2 or 3 uniformed service members would be standing on the porch to tell me you weren't coming home. She lived with that every day for the entire time I was in the military. And so please, when you see the names of these service members on this military wall of honor, please thank their families. They deserve our gratitude just as much as the service members. I loved what I did. I signed up for it. My family did not. In closing, I also hope that this wall is going to serve as a reminder of the freedom that we enjoy in this country. One of my all-time favorite quotes comes from Ronald Reagan. He said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction." We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like to live in the United States, where people were free. That call to action that Father Paul mentioned in his homily. The last thing I hope that this military wall of honor will do is that it will inspire each one of us to just try a little harder to make our schools, our churches, our communities, and our nation better than we found it. Thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this incredible ceremony. Mike, I greatly appreciate you asking me to speak. And I hope for each of us, this military wall of honor will serve as an opportunity for us to remember the veterans, their families, and the freedom that we enjoy in this United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carol.
The names you're about to see is not a complete list of the Salle alumni who have served. We encourage everyone who knows an alumnus who has served to present their name to the advancing office will be included in the near future. So without further ado, the Wall of Honor, military honor, of Salle Collegiate. Dennis, Nikki. That's cool. Timothy Allen, 1965, Air Force. Stephen Amiconi, 1947, Marine Corps. Smigman Anaservich, 1959, Army. Robert Appleton, 1991, Marine Corps. Joto Ahrens, 1959, Navy. John Asman, 2016, Army. Brian Bonas, 1994, Air Force. Ralph Barwick, 1967, Air Force. John Biotti, 1938, Army. Kyle Bentley, 2020, United States Marine Corps. Brian Bumline, 2003, Air Force. Ronald Bamer, 1965, Army. Brian Bohacek, 1966, Army. Arthur Ballard, 1964, Navy. Jonathan Baum, 2005, Marine Corps. Marvin Borowski, 1953, Army. Thomas Browabiak, 1974, Army. James Brennan, 1949, Army. Michael Brickman, 2001, Army. Martin Rostick, 1960, Army. Matthew Brown, 1983, Air Force. Joseph Birch, 1963, Navy. Anthony Berger, 1949, Navy. William Burns, 1956, Air Force. Michael Cameron, 1963, Navy. Robert Capo, 1946, Army. Robert Carlin, 1972, Army. Robert Carlin, 2007, Marine Corps. Edward Carter, 1950, Army. Charles Carter, 1962, Army. Thomas Casaubon, 1961, Army. Paul Chansey, 1966, Navy. Christopher Cieslak, 2007, Air Force. William Collins, 1952, Army. Robert Rume, 2002, Marine Corps. Robert Kucharek, 1962, Air Force. William Curry, 1958, Army. Michael Kuzmanov, 1959, Army. Albert DeBuscher, 1936, Navy. Samuel D'Angelo, 1961, Air Force. Robert DeSchmidt, 1963, Army.
Neil Dorsey, 1951, Army. Frank Dusty, 2011, Army. John Dubois, 1949, Air Force. Robert Duecki, 1947, Army. Thomas Dugal, 1953, Army. Michael Duggan, 1964, Army. John Dupre, 1948, Army. Ronald Dvorak, 1965, Air Force. Timothy Earl, 1992, Navy. Nicholas England, 2021, Army. Stephen Fattori, 1948, Army. Gene Vilas, 1967, Army National Guard. Lawrence Fisher, 1949, Navy. Bernard Fisher, 1963, Marine Corps. James Fitzpatrick, 1949, Navy. John Franchi, 1980, Army. Richard Frett, 1956, Navy. Kyle Fuquay, 2011, Marines. James Gaffney, 1959, Air Force. Richard Gromolski, 1938, Air Force. John Gromolski, 1942, Army. Joseph Gromolski, 1944, Army. Gerald Gromolski, 1946, Army. Thomas Gromolski, 1951, Army. John Gamachia, 1966, Army. Ronald Gandolfi, 1957, Navy. Albert Gelano, 1947, Marines. Michael Gendro, 1985, Army. Richard Gerstner, 1958, Army. Ronald Glass, 1957, Coast Guard. Jerome Gore, 1947, Army. Eugene Golab, 1952, Army. David Goulet, 1982, Marines. Gerald Grayson, 1955, Air Force. Roger Grimaldi, 1956, Army National Guard. Raymond Grodzinski, 1962, Army. Jeffrey Ganay, 2003, Air Force. Martin Guinta, 1963, Navy. John Holman, 1963, Army.
Adam Hannenberg, 2006, Army National Guard. Keith Hardy, 2007, Air Force National Guard. Joseph Hench, 1991, Army. Louis Herbert, 1950, Army. Michael Herman, 1966, Coast Guard. Alexander Hillman, 2007, Air Force. Werner Hinson, 1947, Navy. Matthew Hinson, 1951, Army. Arthur Hitchens, 1939, Marines. Charles Hitchens, 1946, Air Force. David Howes, 1963, Air Force. Herbert Huey, 1962, Army. Lawrence Jaminet, 1965, Army. Walter Jasinski, 1966, Army. John Jennings, 1942, Army. Ethan Johnson, 2011, Army. Nicholas K., 1995, Navy. James K., 1963, Army. James Kaza, 1965, Army. Donald Knopf, 1947, Army. James Kultuniak, 1964, Navy. Ronald Kosinski, 1962, Marines. Keith Kowalski, 1978, Navy. James Kozlowski, 1964, Army. J. Kraus, 1964, Air Force. James Kress, 1942, Marines. Paul Kucharek, 1983, Air Force. Raymond Kurziniak, 1955, Air Force. Paul Kwiatkowski, 1950, Navy. Kevin Labuddy, 1995, Army. Matthew Lamerson, 1994, Marines. Michael Lamer, 2003, Marines. Louis Leskovinsky, 1968, Army. Michael Lesney, 1965, Navy. Paul Lewandowski, 1951, Navy. Alex Linky, 2005, Marines. William Ladholtz, 1974, Air Force. Richard Lloyd, 1951, Army.
Walter McKelt, 1964, Navy. Kevin McFarland, 2009, Navy. Anthony Magovsky, Army National Guard, 1968. George Mangold, 1950, Marine Corps. Joseph Maribel, 2021, Navy. Todd Morale, 2004, Air Force. Bo Marshall, 1991, Navy. Roy Martin, 1949, Army. Troy Mason, 2009, Army. Michael McGrath, 1965, Air Force. John McNamara, 1947, Navy. Sean McQuaid, 2011, Army. Joseph Mearshek, 1959, Navy. Nicholas Michaels, 1942, Army. Brian Miles, 2007, Navy. Norman Miller, 1953, Navy. Joshua Masheri, 1999, Army. Urban Moffett, 1949, Army. Anthony Morgan, 1994, Navy. Ronald Borowsinski, 1950, Army. Aaron Nyman, 2021, Navy. Eugene Niersvik, 1944, Navy. Robert Nugent, 1942, Army. Richard O'Brien, 1957, Navy. Ryan Oakey, 1977, Air Force. Michael Olin, 2021, Marine Corps. John Oros, 1964, Air Force. Joseph Partika, 1961, Navy. Fred Passarelli, 1964, Army. Zachary Plotsky, 2010, Army National Guard. James Pomelia, 1963, Army. Michael Pons, 1947, Army. Ralph Pavlets, 1942, Army. Robert Poxton, 1965, Army. Thomas Preslow, 1968, Army. James Prudhoe, 1963, Air Force. Kenneth Radke, 1961, Army. Robert Ricard, 1954, Coast Guard. Joseph Riss, 1974, Navy. George Regala, 1968, Army.
Leo Romzik, 1942, Army. Thomas Rosati, 1984, Navy. Alexander Roths, 2001, Marines. Henry Rozicki, 1963, Army. Walter Ryan, 1963, Marines. William Rybarczyk, 1962, Air Force. Philip Romaszewski, 1978, Army. Edwin Salkowski, 1934, Marines. Thaddeus Salkowski, 1948, Army. Donald Salkowski, 1963, Army. Thomas Schenck, 1954, Navy. Eugene Schimmel, 1941, Army. Thomas Schmidt, 1958, Air Force. Christian Schallenberger, 1987, Army. John Schulte, 1963, Army. Glenn Schuster, 1941, Air Force. Michael Schwartz, 1965, Army. Richard Schweikert, 1953, Navy. Jason Shannon, 1991, Marines. John Shea, 1949, Army. Anthony Sorosky, 2007, Marines. Edward Cinnamon, 1952, Army. Robert Sprentner, 1963, Army. Thaddeus Krzyzewski, 1976, Air Force. Randy Sleva, 1984, Navy. Thomas Sowa, 1962, Army. Anthony Spina, 1966, Navy. Parrish Spiss, 1985, Marines. Robert Squires, 2011, Navy. Michael Stass, 2014, Army. Charles Staub, 1938, Air Force. Justin Stewart, 2002, Army. William Stock, 1977, Air Force. Christopher Stoffel, 2005, Army. Ronald Streetenberger, 1952, Air Force. Michael Suey, 2001, Marines. Glenn Sun, 1977, Navy. Michael Schwischer, 1966, Air Force. Michael Zatkowski, 1968, Army. Robert Thomas, 1963, Army National Guard.
Cameron Thompson, 2020, Navy. Daniel Tosh, 1959, Army. Joseph Unieski, 1961, Air Force. Donald Unwin, 1953, Army. Joshua Valancourt, 2017, Army. Evan Valancourt, 2019, Army. James Vandeveld, 1964, Air Force. David Van Howe, 1947, Army. Casey Veriel, 2005, Army. Oscar Vercruyze, 1942, Air Force. Dominic Violente, 2002, Marines. Joseph Walrad, 1968, Army. David Warner, 1955, Army. Edward Wegener, 1952, Army. Dennis West, 1964, Army. Mark Wheeler, 1988, Marine Corps. John Wilhelm, 1962, Air Force. Francis Wilson, 1948, Navy. Peter Woolson, 1977, Army. Joseph Weiskill, 1964, Air Force. David Zielinski, 1967, Air Force. Andrews Merkevich, 1971, Marines. Gerald Zmilo, 1962, Army. Joseph Zolkowski, 1952, Air Force. We ask that all the names that were called up, if you were present and able to stand, can you please do so to be honored?
Robert Leslie Poxon, First Lieutenant, United States Army, Troop Bravo, 1st Squadron, 9th Cavalry, 1st Cavalry Division, Thi Inh Province, Republic of Vietnam, 2 June 1969. Citation: for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action at the risk of his own life above and beyond the call of duty. First Lieutenant Poxon, Armor, Troop Bravo, distinguished himself while serving as a platoon leader on a reconnaissance mission. Landing by helicopter in an area suspected of being occupied by the enemy, the platoon came under intense fire from enemy soldiers in concealed positions in fortifications around the landing zone. A soldier fell, hit by the first burst of fire. First Lieutenant Poxon dashed to his aid, drawing the majority of the enemy fire as he crossed 20 meters of open ground. The fallen soldier was beyond help, and First Lieutenant Poxon was seriously and painfully wounded. First Lieutenant Poxon, with indomitable courage, refused medical aid and evacuation, and turned his attention to seizing the initiative from the enemy. With sheer instinct, he marked a central enemy bunker as the key to success, quickly instructing his men to concentrate their fire on the bunker. In spite of his wound, First Lieutenant Poxon crawled toward the bunker, ready to hand grenade, and charged. He was hit again, but continued his assault. After succeeding in silencing the enemy guns in the bunker, he was struck once again by the enemy fire and fell, mortally wounded. First Lieutenant Poxon's comrades followed their leader, pressed the attack, and drove the enemy from their positions. First Lieutenant Poxon's gallantry, indomitable will, and courage are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service, and reflect great credit upon himself, his unit, and the United States Army.
In a moment, you'll hear the playing of taps, which Congress designated as our national song of remembrance in 2012. There are lyrics that go with that, and I'll share them with you. You could almost do it by heart because it was taught to me when I was a kid, and everybody at the boys' camp that I went to. And it simply is, day is done, gone the sun, from the lakes, from the hills, from the sky. All is well, safely rest, God is nigh.
Please stand.
Hand over your Bible. Please be seated. Thank you, Brendan. Family to come forward and share their thoughts. Is that going to be you, Karen?
Yep.
Okay. Well,
Can I tell you,
I saw Larry.
you can not be with me. You messed up on one thing. Taps always gets to me. Should have played tap chapter. I'd like to tell you a little bit about my brother Bob. He was born January 3rd, 1947 in Detroit, the oldest of 6 children. Bob was an active member in our church and school community, from being an altar boy, played baseball in the grade school team, to being a Cub Scout and a Boy Scout, and then joined the Sea Explorers. Bob was a quiet kid, shy, and religious. He looked after others, including his siblings, and was a true friend. Bob went to 13 years of Catholic high school. He started out high school at Old St. Joe's and moved to De La Salle when St. Joe's School closed. After De La Salle, Bob decided he wanted to become a priest and went into the first co-ed seminary in St. Louis. It was there he realized young men did not act like the old priests in our parish, and decided the priesthood was not for him. After coming home, he had discussions with our dad and decided that he wanted to enlist in the Army. He was single, and he wanted to save one married man from having to leave their family sooner than they had to. Talking to men at reunions over the years, I've begun to know my brother a little better by the stories they would tell me about Bob. It was apparent that his platoon respected him as a leader because he led by example. He would be up front with his men. They knew he would never ask them to do something that he was not willing to do, so they trusted him. Even though it's been 52 years, I have had discussions with some men and have come to realize that they remember and miss him almost as much as our family does. In October 1968, Bob started his tour in Vietnam. Through letters, Bob talked about his duty to his country, as well as his duty to his men. On June 2nd, 1969, our world would change forever. We lost our brother. We take great consolation in knowing that his platoon, the Army, and the 1st Air Cav Division acknowledge that our brother gave his life for our country. Our parents are with him now, and it helps knowing they are together again. Bob was one of 10 Medal of Honor recipients during the Vietnam War from Michigan. Only 3 were living recipients. For 40 years, there was a guest house at Fort Hood named after 1st Lieutenant Robert L. Poxon before it was torn down a few years ago. The Robert L. Poxon American Legion Post 326, dedicated in 1997, was the first post in Michigan named after a Vietnam soldier. The United States Army Reserve Center in Southfield is named after him. One of 6 basic training barracks at Fort Benning is named after him, and he was inducted into the Officers Candidate School Hall of Fame 2 years ago at Fort Benning. Our mom was a Gold Star mother. She lived to see most of these moments and would take great pride, as we do today, that De La Salle is recognizing its alumni who have served for our country. And they all wrote a blank check for up to and including their lives for our freedom. Thank you for serving our country.
I want to thank everybody for being here, everybody who supported this, the American Legion post that provided much of the displays here. And certainly Deacon and Father for being here with us. It's important. I failed to share with you what I said to my son at the dinner table. I had to ask my wife, did I say this or not? I do that more and more lately. But when Mike challenged me about, he wasn't quite as polite as I wish he would, like how could I have been so stupid to go fight in Vietnam, or at least during that era, even though I wasn't assigned there. And I said to him, and this is something that I wish I could tell you who said it to me, but it's always stuck with me, and it's that if you don't have anything worth dying for, you don't have anything worth living for. And maybe you've heard that before, maybe not. I don't hear it often. But it's something that, and the rest of the kids were around. Mike was the oldest of 7 boys, so they all heard it. And I hope they took that with them. And I especially appreciated Father and Deacon staying here, because we all know that our Savior had something worth dying for, which made his life immeasurable. And so it's appropriate that we end this afternoon before the meal with Father blessing the military wall. So I would invite you to do that.
Our help is in the name of the Lord.
Who made heaven and earth.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
Let us pray. O God, whose word suffices to make all things holy, pour out your blessing on this wall of military honor, and grant that anyone who comes to remember, to learn, and to pray for those who have served our country with a grateful heart, and keeping your law and will in mind, may receive from you, their Maker, health in body and protection of soul by calling on your holy name, and through their prayers for the faithful departed, a measure of redemption and peace for them. We ask this through Christ our Lord.
Amen.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
May the blessing of Almighty God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit descend upon you and remain forever.
Amen.
This concludes this dedication ceremony. Everyone's invited to lunch in the St. John.